In this example, I'm going to show you how to derive information from the date column. The date column can be used to help you put in dummy variables like days of the week and months of the year. You can also derive out the day index. So for example, this would be day number 1 and day number 2 and so forth, because we want to use that in our regression. Before we begin deriving the dates, there's a couple of things that we want to do. One is we want to be able to go down and make sure we have the new dates. So our ending information that we have on traffic ends here at the end of November of the 2017. And so I've put in a month of additional days here so that we can do it. Now the reason we do this here is because we're going to use these functions that will go over and pull this information and derive usable information out of this date, such as day of the week, month of the year, and so forth. I wanted to show you sort of the end result here, because it does a good job of sort of helping you see why we put the dates in for the forecasted values. Because the functions that we use to derive these various columns of information will actually look at these dates and create information that will be used in our regression to be able to calculate this. So by having the dates in there, then we're able to derive the day index, the day squared. We're able to also have the values for the dummy variables. All of these are going to be useful when we're trying to forecast this information. So generally you put the dates in first, then you build these other formulas out here in the columns that will fill in these columns, and things work out well that way. Now let's begin. We're going to do a time index, and this is daily information. So I'm going to add a new column here. And then we're going to want to have a formula derive the time index. Over here in the functions that it gives you a number of functions that can be useful. It can give you a date difference. We're going to use that. It can also pull out things like the month and the quarter. That's useful because these functions make it so we don't have to do very much in terms of complicated programming to be able to get things to work. The date difference function is very useful for being able to create your time indexes. This is the format of the parameters that it takes. It takes a beginning date and an end date. And then it will also let you specify whether you want the difference to be in days or hours or whatever. And then the actual says basically you want a complete day. You don't want a fraction of a day. So in our example then, what I'm going to do is I'm going to put in the 31st of December 2015 because that's one day before this date. Therefore, when it grabs the date out of this column, subtracts this, then whatever gets put in here will be the number of days since December 31st, 2015. The first will be day number 1, the second will be day number 2, and so forth. By putting a colon in front of the column name, so here's the date column name, by putting a colon in front of there, I'm telling it to go into date, whatever, it'll go record by record and it'll apply it down each of the records. So we're saying go pull it out of this date column. Let's just move this over now and go define this and use this function in here. So we want to go to formula and open this up and paste our formula in. And so because I had put a colon in there, then it says, oh, that's one of mine. That's a date that we have in here. And we'll hit OK. And you can see what happened is it went down and started at 1 and populated these all the way down to the end of the data table. Now, to be able to add the next column, we already have this column in place. So now we can make another column. If we want to put in the squared term, we can do that easily. We can go new column, and then we're going to go back down to our formulas. And this actually is a pretty easy formula to do because we already have this. So what we can do is we can pull this over here, and then we can take the square of it. So here we can see that we have this. So by clicking this up here, it says, oh, you want to take time of day and square it. So we'll hit OK. And you can see here that it's calculated the squares, so that worked out just fine. Now the next thing we need to do is we need to be able to extract dummy variables. Traffic may be different on Monday, Tuesdays, and Wednesdays, and it also may be different January and February than it is in later months and so forth. So now we're going to do that. And let's work first on the day of the week. And this is going to be character, because what's going to be in here is we purposely do not want to have numbers in here. We don't want regression to be confused by looking at numbers here when we're really looking for categories of days. Then when we add a formula to be able to work on this date and figure out what day it is, then we need the formula to be able to do this. And really the easiest way to do this is with a lookup formula, a choose formula. And so here for our day of the week, there is a choose formula, and what this does is it allows you to go use the day of the week formula that JMP has, look at the date, and then what it does is it will come out with day 1 for Sunday, day 2 for Monday, but it just returns an integer. But if you follow down here with the series, when this function returns a 1, it will say, okay, choose, and then it'll say 1, and it will grab the very first value. If what comes out of this is 2, it'll grab the second value, and so forth. That's the easiest way, or an easy way that I found to be able to do this. So now we have this in here. Now, why have I put an integer in front of these? I could have just put in SUN, MON, and so forth. The reason I do this is that I have found that a lot of data mining software will actually sort this alphabetically. And I find that a bit distracting. By putting these integer values in, it'll usually sort from Sunday to Saturday. All right, so we'll hit apply here and OK. And so now we have added this. Now let's get our month here as well. This also is going to be a character data type because, again, we want dummy variables. We do not want to use 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 through 12 because that is really not appropriate, because we're wanting to use dummy variables. We want it to think of each of these months as categories. So I'm going to open up my formula box, and I've got my formula editor here, and I want to do the very same thing that I did before, except now instead of looking up on the day of the week, I want to look up at the month. So by using JMP's month function, it'll take whatever the date is, it'll pull out a 1, 2, 3, 4, on up through to 12. And then if it's a 1, I've got it set up so that instead of a 1 being showing, the choose function will just take the first value here. If a 2 comes out of this, it'll take the second value, and so forth. So now it shows up here. These are all the way we want them, and so we'll hit OK, and we'll apply that and hit OK. So now we have our day of the week and we have our month, and again I put the integer values in front. Now we have numbers in here, but we also have characters in here, and so even though we have numbers and characters in here, these will be treated as dummy variables. Had I just had 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 in here and had this as a date or a numeric data type, then the data mining algorithms would treat these differently than we want them to be treated. So at this point we're ready to go in terms of having our data prep.